3:42 am. The house is silent except for the faint hum of climate control and the distant sweep of wind against the glass walls. Then she whispers it. Please, don't. Broken. Like something inside her is cracking, his eyes open instantly. He doesn't move at first. He listens. She's still asleep, breath uneven, fingers curled into the sheets like she's bracing for impact. A tear slips from the corner of her eye and disappears into the pillow. Jenaho Park has seen men beg for their lives. He has watched rivals fall to their knees. He has heard apologies spill out of bloodied mouths in warehouses that smell like rust and fear. But he has never heard his wife beg, and certainly not. Like that in the daylight, Amara Wilson Park does not beg. She negotiates, she builds, she commands rooms without raising her voice. She challenges him at breakfast and corrects his Korean when his tone slips informal. She walks through his world without flinching. She married a Mafia boss and never once asked him to soften himself, so why is she trembling now? He shifts slightly, careful not to wake her. She whispers again. Don't. Barely audible, but the fear in it is not imagined. It is muscle memory. He feels something cold settle under his ribs. This isn't random. This isn't a bad dream from a bad meal. This is history surfacing. He studies her face in the dim blue light from the city beyond their windows. She rarely speaks about the year before him. She mentions it like weather. It happened. It's over. I handled it. She never gives detail. He never forced it. He believed silence meant healing. But this sounds unfinished. Her body jerks suddenly as if someone invisible has grabbed her wrist. He reaches for her instinctively. She flinches even in sleep. That does something to him he cannot name. He pulls his hand back slowly, not because he wants to, but because he needs to think. He has built an empire on pattern recognition. Nothing happens without cause. Fear like this does not disappear just because a marriage certificate changes hands. He sits up quietly. The digital clock glows 3:42 in cold red numbers. He watches her for another 10 seconds. Her breathing settles slightly. But her fingers remain clenched. She is fighting something that is not here. He swings his legs off the bed without turning on the light. The room remains dark. He dresses in silence. Black sweater, dark jeans. Holster secured against his ribs. The small weight of his Glock familiar and grounding. He looks at her one more time before leaving. She looks small in sleep, not weak, small. And that unsettles him more than the whisper. He opens the bedroom door and closes it without a sound downstairs. The house feels different at this hour. The art on the walls looks colder. The marble floors echo differently. He walks past the living room, past the untouched wine from dinner, past the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. He doesn't go to his visible office. He goes lower to the basement, to the real office, soundproofed. Walls, monitors glowing, maps. Encrypted drives. Min-suk looks up from his station in surprise. Boss! Jenaho doesn't sit. Everything. Min-suk straightens instantly. Everything on what? Her past fiancé. The room shifts. Min-suk hesitates half a second. We did a standard check before the wedding. I want what doesn't show up in standard. His voice is calm, flat. That is when his men know something irreversible is happening. Financial patterns, private messages, surveillance, travel logs, associates. I want everything. Min-suk nods and begins typing. Understood. Jenaho steps closer to the screens. His reflection stares back at him in the glass, steady, controlled. But his jaw is tight. She whispered please like someone cornered. She flinched from his touch. She has never flinched from him before. Min-suk speaks quietly. May I ask what prompted this? Jenaho's answer is simple. She had a nightmare. Min-suk doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. He knows what that means. When the boss moves at 4 a.m. it is not curiosity. It is war. Jenaho watches data begin to load across screens. Name. Darren Caldwell. Images from events. Public smiles. Private timelines. The man had disappeared from Amara's life months before the marriage. On paper everything ended clean, but paper lies, silence lies. Fear does not. He folds his arms behind his back. Flag any contact attempts in the last 6 months. Yes. Any sightings within 5 miles of her firm. Yes. Any political connections that think they're untouchable. Understood. This is no longer about jealousy. This is pattern correction. If someone still believes they own what is his, that belief must be erased. He turns toward the staircase but stops halfway up. One more order. No one tells her about this. Min-suk pauses. Not even. No one. He walks back upstairs slowly. The house is still dark. When he re-enters the bedroom, she is quiet now, her hands relaxed, breathing even. He stands beside the bed for a long moment, watching, guarding. He reaches out again. This time she doesn't flinch, but the tear stain remains on the pillow. He lies back down without waking her, stares at the ceiling, waiting for the reports to complete. Because one thing is certain. She was not begging the air. And whoever she was whispering to is about to learn what 4 a.m. means in his world. Who is she still afraid of? The first report arrives at 4:17 a.m. It isn't thick, it isn't dramatic, it's quiet. Data always is. Jenaho stands in the basement office as screens fill with timelines. Bank transfers. Shared accounts. Asset shifts. Darren Caldwell did not hit her. That would have been simple to document. He was smarter than that. He tightened, he redirected, he isolated. Small changes at first. He offered to help manage her finances. He merged accounts. He placed spending alerts. He labeled her design contracts unstable. Suggested she reduce her workload. Focus on us. The language looks romantic on paper, and in context it is surgical. Within 8 months her liquid assets dropped by 40%. Major clients transferred to joint investment oversight. Which meant him. Min-suk speaks without looking up. He positioned himself as financial protector. Jenaho nods once. Control disguised as care. He scrolls further. Private emails recovered from archived backups. Darren apologizing after destroying one of her project models. Claims he lost control. Promises it won't happen again. Then 3 weeks later another incident. An assistant fired after questioning Darren's interference. The doorman from her old apartment building logged repeated late-night arguments. No police reports, no witnesses willing to testify. But patterns don't lie. Jenaho's jaw tightens. The public image is immaculate. Philanthropy events, magazine features. Future Senate campaign whispers. Smiling beside her in tailored suits. Hand resting at her lower back a little too firmly, Min-suk clears his throat. There's more. Security footage from 3 weeks ago. Darren across the street from Amara's firm, baseball cap. Pretending to be on his phone, he stood there for 14 minutes. Left only when her driver arrived. Jenaho's expression doesn't change, but the temperature in the room does. There's a statement from a bartender at an upscale club, Min-suk continues. He was intoxicated. He said she made a mistake. Said she still belongs to him. Silence follows that sentence. Jenaho steps closer to the screen. Play the clip. The audio is faint but clear enough. Darren laughing. You don't just walk away from me. She'll realize that. Someone asks about her marriage, he smirks. Temporary. She doesn't know it yet. The clip ends. Min-suk doesn't look at his boss. He doesn't need to. The controlled fury is more dangerous than rage. Jenaho inhales slowly. He thinks of 3:42 a.m. Of her fingers twisting in sheets. The whisper. He thinks of how she never once asked him to interfere. She married him for stability, not retaliation. And now this man stands outside her world whispering ownership. He reviews travel records. Darren cancelled a London lease last month. He is back in the city officially for investment consultation. Unofficially, he has been within 5 miles of Amara's office 3 times. Jenaho folds his arms behind his back, the posture he uses before issuing sentences. Does she know? He asks quietly. No indication. Min-suk hesitates. Boss. If we move publicly it will create noise. He has political connections. Jenaho's eyes lift slightly. That's almost a smile. Noise can be controlled. He walks toward the metal table at the center of the room, sits slowly, fingers interlaced. This isn't about punishment. This is about precedent. If a man believes he still owns something that belongs to Jenaho Park, that belief must die. He considers options. Legal exposure, media leaks, financial dismantling. All effective, but none immediate. He wants Darren to understand the correction personally. Not through lawyers, not through headlines. Min-suk watches him calculate. Arrange a meeting, Jenaho says. Finally. Location: warehouse in the industrial district. Oz. Should we call it a negotiation? Jeniho's voice stays level. No, that single word carries finality. This isn't negotiation. He rises from the chair. It's judgment. Minsuk begins making calls. Secure channel, private escort, no traceable invites. Jeniho moves toward the staircase but stops again. He comes alone, he adds. Understood. As he climbs back upstairs, the house feels different now. Not fragile. Not uncertain, resolved. He enters the bedroom quietly. Amara is awake this time, sitting at the window, watching dawn stretch across the skyline. She turns slightly when he enters. You were gone, she says softly. Business, he replies. She studies him. There's intelligence in her gaze. She always senses shifts. You look like you've made a decision, she says. He crosses the room slowly. I did. She searches his face for detail. He gives her none, not yet. She nods once. She doesn't ask. That trust hits him harder than the whisper earlier. She turns back toward the light rising over the city. I hate that he still exists, she says suddenly. Jeniho stops. Who? She doesn't look at him. Some people don't disappear just because you leave them. The room holds that sentence between them. He walks closer, stands behind her, his reflection beside hers in the glass. He won't scare you again, he says quietly. She goes still, not fearful, not reassured either, just aware. Jeniho, she says carefully, don't turn this into something bigger than it needs to be. There it is, the line. She is afraid of escalation, not him. But what power does when directed? He places his hand lightly over hers on the windowsill. Trust me. Her jaw tightens slightly. She nods. But she doesn't look convinced. Downstairs phones begin moving. Men begin assembling. A warehouse door will open in a few hours. And a man who believes he still owns something will walk inside thinking he is attending a conversation. He isn't. He is walking into correction. The only question left hanging in the quiet morning light is simple. Is he about to protect her? Or escalate something she barely escaped? The warehouse smells like metal and dust and old rain. Jeniho is already seated when Darren Caldwell is escorted inside. No dramatic lighting, no theatrics. Just a single steel table under industrial lamps and 3 men positioned far enough away to signal control without spectacle. Darren walks in, adjusting his cufflinks like this is a networking event. He stops when he sees who is waiting for him, a flicker of recognition, then annoyance. I was told this was about donors, Darren says, irritation. Sharpening his voice. Jeniho doesn't stand. It is. He gestures to the chair across from him. Sit. There is something about his tone that makes refusal feel unwise. Darren sits anyway but leans back deliberately, performing confidence. You're her husband, Darren says casually. I was wondering when you'd surface. Jeniho folds his hands on the table, his expression neutral, studying, not emotional. You've been near her firm 3 times, he says quietly. Darren's smile tightens. Public sidewalk. You told a bartender she belongs to you. I was drunk. You told an investor she made a mistake leaving. People say things. No one raises their voice. The silence between sentences is heavier than shouting. Jeniho slides a thin folder across the table. Darren doesn't open it. Financial transfers. Surveillance stills. Email archives. Jeniho's tone never shifts. Your campaign advisors would find them interesting. Darren scoffs. You don't have the nerve. Jeniho's eyes lift slightly. I don't need nerve. I need leverage. That word lands, he continues. You positioned yourself as financial guardian. Reduced her autonomy. Isolated her professionally. Destroyed her property under emotional duress. Darren's jaw tightens. She's dramatic. She is precise, Jeniho replies. You mistook restraint for weakness. Darren leans forward now, a crack in the composure. You don't know her, he snaps. You married her for optics. There it is, the attempt to destabilize. Jeniho doesn't react. I know enough. Darren's lips curl slightly. She gets scared. He folds. She comes back when she realizes the world isn't kind. One of the men in the shadows shifts slightly. Jeniho raises one finger without looking and the room stills again. Control, Darren continues, sensing a reaction and mistaking it for advantage. She stayed with me for 18 months. You think you're different. She'll realize what you are. Criminal. Foreign liability. She'll get tired of playing Mafia wife. Silence. Genaho rises slowly, not rushed, not dramatic. He walks around the table, the measured sound of his shoes against concrete echoes. Darren straightens but doesn't stand. Genaho stops directly in front of him. Close enough that Darren has to tilt his head slightly to maintain eye contact. Careful, Darren mutters. This isn't soul. Genaho's hand moves faster than Darren expects. IT closes around his throat, not squeezing, not yet. Just firm enough to erase the illusion of safety. The room shifts, the men in the shadows don't move. This is not chaos, this is instruction. Darren's pulse jumps visibly beneath Genaho's fingers. Listen carefully, Genaho says softly, his voice is almost conversational. She doesn't beg anymore. The words settle like frost. Darren tries to pull back but the grip tightens a fraction. Just enough to remind him of scale. You mistook survival for submission, Genaho continues. That was your error. Darren's hands grip the edges of the chair. He's calculating exits. There are none. You will not go near her firm again. The pressure increases slightly. You will not speak her name publicly. A breath stolen. You will not test proximity to my life. Darren manages a strained whisper. Or what? Genaho leans closer. Or I erase your public future so quietly you won't know when it began. He releases him suddenly. Darren coughs, grabbing his throat but trying to mask it as a minor inconvenience. Humiliation flushes across his face. Rage follows quickly. You think fear works on me? Darren says hoarsely. She always comes back to what she understands. Genaho steps back, adjusting his sleeve as if nothing happened. This is your only warning. His tone is final, no raised volume, no threat of violence beyond implication. You disappear from her life completely, he continues. Or I dismantle yours piece by piece. Darren stands now, reclaiming posture. You're overreacting. A faint smile crosses Genaho's face. No, he says. I'm calibrating. The escort men step forward, subtly signaling the meeting is finished. Darren smooths his jacket, regaining the mask. She married you for protection, he says. Not love. When she realizes you're just another cage, she'll look for me. Genaho watches him without blinking. Leave, he says. Darren hesitates half a second. Then walks toward the exit. The heavy metal door slides shut behind him. The warehouse returns to stillness. Min-suk steps closer. Do you believe he'll comply? Genaho looks at the closed door for a long moment. Fear works on most men. But ownership is not fear. Ownership is delusion. And delusion rarely dissolves quietly. He turns away from the door. Increase surveillance radius, he orders. Discreet. Yes, boss. As Genaho walks back toward the steel table, his phone vibrates once. He doesn't check it. Not yet. He already knows this isn't finished. False compliance is the most dangerous compliance of all. The question hangs heavier than the warehouse air itself. Will fear stop a man who thinks he owns her? The restaurant is quiet, not empty, but controlled, private floor. Reserved hours agio, no security visible, though both of them know it's there. She sits across from him in candlelight, gold catching in her hair, hands folded loosely in front of her wine glass. It feels normal. Almost dangerously normal. He watches the tension in her shoulders soften as the first course arrives. She notices him studying her. You're evaluating, she says softly. He shakes his head. No, a pause. I'm trying to memorize this. That earns a small smile. The kind that doesn't fully reach her eyes but tries. They eat slowly, conversation lighter than it has been in weeks. Design projects, his upcoming travel, a new gallery she wants to visit. There is relief here, a fragile kind, but relief nonetheless. He finally speaks the thing he has been holding. I'm falling in love with you. He doesn't dramatize it, doesn't reach across the table, just says it like fact. She stills, the candle flame shifts between them. She studies him like he's handed her something breakable. That's not strategic, she says lightly. He almost smiles. No silent stretches, not uncomfortable but weighted. She exhales slowly. I tested you, she admits. The honesty is quiet but deliberate. When we first married, I watched how you handled pressure. I watched how you handled anger. I needed to know you weren't him. He doesn't interrupt, she continues. You never shouted. You never cornered me. You never touched me when I was upset. Her fingers tighten slightly around the stem of her glass. I didn't tell you that was intentional. I needed control. He nods once. I know. That surprises her. You knew. Yes. He leans back slightly. Fear leaves patterns. Her jaw shifts, she looks down at the tablecloth for a second. Sometimes I still have nightmares, she says quietly. The restaurant noise feels distant now. Sometimes it's about leaving him, packing my bags, not knowing where I'd land. She looks up at him now, honest, unshielded. Sometimes it's about you. That lands differently, he doesn't react outwardly. But something behind his eyes tightens. About me. Not about you hurting me, she clarifies quickly. About losing myself again. She swallows. You're powerful, Jenaho. And when powerful men protect you, sometimes it feels like a shadow instead of sunlight. There it is, the fracture lined, he absorbs it without flinching. I don't want to own you, he says evenly. I know. She believes that, but belief and fear are not enemies, they coexist. When you went out at 4 this morning, she says softly, I knew it wasn't business. He doesn't lie. I met him. Her expression doesn't change, but her breathing does. Did you hurt him? He considers the question carefully. I warned him. She nods slowly, a mix of relief and something else. She reaches for his hand this time, her fingers cool against his skin. I don't want to be the reason you cross lines you can't uncross. He studies her face in the candlelight. You're not the reason, he says quietly. I choose my lines. The waiter approaches briefly, refills glasses, leaves, the moment continues. I was afraid of marriage, she admits. Not because of commitment. Because of dependence. She squeezes his hand slightly. You never made me feel small. He doesn't answer immediately, he simply holds her gaze. Then he says the thing that seals something between them. No one will ever scare you again. The promise isn't loud, it isn't theatrical, it's deliberate. She hears the weight inside it. She knows what it costs him to say it. She also knows what it means. She nods once, but something unsettled flickers in her eyes. He notices, he always notices. What? He asks gently. She hesitates, that hesitation matters. What if the fear isn't only about him? She says finally, his expression shifts slightly. Explain. She looks away for a moment, as if saying it makes it real. When you protect me, sometimes I feel powerful and sometimes I feel like the reason storms happen. The words hang there, he understands now. This isn't about Darren, it's about the gravitational pull of his world. The way protection can become perimeter. The way love can become alignment. The way enemies measure attachments. She looks back at him. I don't want to be your weakness. He leans forward slightly. You're not. But inside something moves. He remembers the warehouse, remembers Darren's voice. She'll come back. He remembers the way she trembled in sleep. And now this new layer, new variable. Because fear doesn't only come from past men. Sometimes it comes from futures not yet written. He pays the bill, they stand. She slips her hand into his arm as they walk toward the exit, a simple gesture. But outside the glass doors a car engine idles longer than necessary. And across the street a camera lens lowers slightly. When they step into view, he notices. She doesn't. He places his hand over hers lightly as they descend the steps. The air is cool. The city hums quietly. It feels like relief. But relief is often the breath before fracture. And as the car door opens for her, one question lingers heavier than the promise he just made. What if the fear isn't only about the ex? She doesn't speak about it until they are home. The house is quiet, staff dismissed, security outside, but distant. The hallway lights are low. She walks past the bedroom and into the sitting room instead. That alone tells him this isn't casual. She doesn't sit beside him. She stands by the window, her reflection faint in the glass. I need to say it before I lose courage, she says softly. He remains standing a few feet away. Not approaching, not cornering, just listening. The nightmare wasn't about Darren. Silence stretches between them. He doesn't interrupt. It was about you. There it is. No anger in her voice, no accusation. Just truth. In the stillness, even the air feels different. Tell me, he says evenly. She exhales slowly, inhales again. In the dream I couldn't find my phone, she says. I couldn't call anyone. The house was locked. Not violently. Just quietly. Her hands tighten at her sides. You were calm. Controlled. You kept saying it was for my safety. He feels the words land but keeps his expression neutral. Every door I tried led back to you. Her voice trembles slightly now. You weren't cruel. That's what scared me. He steps forward once, stops. Explain. She turns to face him fully now. Her eyes aren't angry, they're afraid. You weren't shouting. You weren't hitting. You were deciding. She swallows. Where I went. Who I saw. What I needed. A long pause. And you believed you were protecting me. The room holds that sentence like glass. He studies her carefully. She isn't projecting, she's remembering something deeper than Darren. She's remembering power itself. I married you because you felt safe, she continues. But sometimes I think I confuse strength with security. He doesn't answer immediately, he doesn't defend himself, that restraint matters, she continues. I watched how quickly you handled him. She doesn't say Darren's name, she doesn't need to. You arranged a meeting. You judged him. You decided the boundary. Her voice drops. I didn't ask you to. He feels something shift under his ribs. You were afraid, he says quietly. Yes. He nods. But fear doesn't give someone ownership over my response. The words are gentle, but they cut deeper than accusation. He turns away slightly, walks toward the bar, pours water. He needs the movement, not for control, for clarity. You think I'm becoming him, he says finally. She flinches slightly at the phrasing. No, a pause. I think power doesn't ask permission. That lands harder than anything else. He replays the last weeks in his mind. He arranged surveillance on Darren without telling her. He instructed extended monitoring around her firm. He placed additional men on rotation outside their estate. He justified each decision as necessary. But he didn't consult her. He informed her after. He sets the glass down carefully. Your phone, he says slowly. She watches him. It's mirrored to the security server. Her breath catches slightly. He doesn't hide it. After you whispered that night, I expanded coverage. Silence falls thick between them. Without telling me, she says. Not accusatory, just factual. He nods once. Yes. She closes her eyes briefly. That small gesture hits him harder than shouting ever could. That's what I'm afraid of, she whispers. The quiet decisions. He steps closer now, not to dominate but to bridge. I would never hurt you. She looks at him steadily. I know. That's what makes it worse, because this isn't about harm, it's about agency. She moves past him slightly. Picks up her phone from the table, holds it up. Do I get to choose what protection looks like? He doesn't answer immediately, because the honest answer is complicated. He was raised to eliminate threats before they grow, to seal cracks before they spread. Consultation is inefficiency in his world. But marriage is not empire. She lowers the phone. I don't want to be shielded into silence. The sentence lingers. He feels the weight of something irreversible settling inside him. Not conflict, not anger, realization. He has already shifted pieces in her life without consent. He has already decided proximity rules. He has already mirrored the behavior she escaped. Only with cleaner edges, more sophistication, less shouting, but still unilateral control. He exhales slowly. I removed options without asking, he says quietly. She doesn't respond, but her stillness confirms it. You married me for protection, he continues. Yes, but you fear power itself. She nods once. Power doesn't scare me, she corrects softly. Power without dialogue does. He absorbs that, because in his world dialogue is a courtesy, not a requirement. And now it is. She steps closer to him, not retreating, not attacking. I need to know I can leave a room without someone deciding where I should go instead. Her eyes hold his steadily. Even if the decision is meant to save me. The silence between them is heavier than any warehouse threat. He sees it clearly now. The nightmare isn't about Darren, it's about the architecture of control. The subtle shift from protection to perimeter. He reaches for her hand slowly, gives her space to pull away. She doesn't. She lets him hold it. I don't want to repeat history, she says quietly. He nods once. Because the question isn't whether he loves her, it does. The question is more dangerous. Is he protecting her, or repeating history? He doesn't argue, he doesn't defend himself, he listens, and then he does something she doesn't expect. If you want out, he says quietly, I'll give it to you. She looks up sharply. He continues before she can interrupt. Divorce. Clean exit. Full financial independence. No surveillance. No guards. No conditions. He steps back slightly, giving the offer physical space. You walk away untouched. The room goes still. That wasn't what she expected. Not resistance. Not persuasion. Freedom. She studies his face carefully. You would let me leave? He nods once. If my presence feels like a cage, I remove myself. There is no anger in it, no wounded pride. Just controlled finality. She exhales slowly. That option lands heavier than control ever could. She shakes her head. I don't want to leave. The words come steady this time. I want to stay. He doesn't move. Then what do you want? Her answer is immediate. Don't protect me. Stand beside me. Silence settles between them again. But this time it feels different. Not fractured, aligned. I don't need you to erase threats before I know they exist, she continues. I need you to let me face them with you. Her gaze doesn't waver. Not behind me. Not inside a perimeter. Beside me. He absorbs the distinction. It is subtle, but absolute. He nods slowly. Then we do it together. That decision shifts something foundational, not in the house, in the structure of how he moves through the world. He will escalate, Geneho says calmly. She doesn't flinch. Then we face him openly. He studies her. Publicly. She nods once. Publicly. And just like that, the strategy changes. Not removal. Not silent correction, visibility. He arranges the meeting not in a warehouse. Not in shadows. But in daylight. A private charity luncheon Darren is scheduled to attend. Political donors. Press access. Cameras. The room is elegant. White linen tables. Crystal glassware. Murmurs of wealth and influence. Darren is mid-conversation when he sees them enter together. His composure slips for half a second. Amara is not behind Geneho. She walks beside him, hands steady, eyes forward. The whispers start immediately. Crime boss, architect wife, political donor scandal. Darren forces a smile. Amara, he says smoothly. She doesn't return it. Darren. No warmth. No tremor. Geneho says nothing yet. This is her confrontation. She steps closer just enough for nearby tables to notice. You've been near my office, she says clearly. Public sidewalk, he replies lightly. She doesn't blink. You told people I belong to you. The word belongs hangs sharper in daylight. Now heads turn. Now phones lift subtly. Darren shifts, sensing attention. You're overreacting. No, she says evenly. I'm correcting the narrative. Geneho remains silent. That matters, she continues. I left because you confused control with love. The room grows quieter now. Darren laughs awkwardly. This isn't appropriate. She doesn't raise her voice. It's necessary. Cameras catch the tension. Faces leaning closer. Darren tries to regain ground. You married him for protection, he says pointedly. She nods once. Yes. The honesty unsettles him. And I choose him. Publicly. That sentence lands harder than any insult. Geneho finally speaks, his tone calm. You will not approach her again. No threat. No raised voice. Just finality. Darren's smile cracks slightly. You think public appearances scare me? Geneho's eyes don't shift. No. Consequences do. Security. Inside the venue subtly adjusts positioning. The event coordinator pretends not to watch. This is power handled without shouting. Amara steps closer to Geneho deliberately. Not hidden, aligned. Photographers capture the image. Her hand slides into his. This time not from obligation, from choice. Darren realizes too late that this wasn't confrontation, it was declaration. He backs off slightly. Smooths his jacket. "You'll regret making this theatrical," he mutters. Amara doesn't answer, she's already turned away. Jeniho walks beside her, not guiding, not steering, equal stride. The luncheon continues. But the narrative has shifted. Photos leak within the hour. Headlines form before sunset. Crime boss and wife confront political donor. Architect publicly severs past. Media speculation swells. Some frame it as scandal. Some as strength. Some as instability, but it is visible. And visibility changes calculations. Back in the car she exhales slowly, adrenaline fading. "You didn't step in," she says quietly. "You didn't need me to." She nods once, that was the point. But visibility is never neutral. By evening, encrypted messages begin moving through channels Jeniho knows too well. Rivals noticing alignment. Political figures reassessing distance. An empire doesn't hide affection without cost. And exposure travels fast. He looks at his phone, not showing her the alerts, not yet. The car drives forward. City lights reflecting off tinted glass. She rests her head back against the seat. Not frightened, not trapped. But aware visibility can be armor. Or execution. And as headlines circulate and old enemies begin recalculating, one question rises quietly beneath the noise. What happens when exposure reaches his enemies? The council room is colder than usual, no windows. Just a long black table and 12 men who built their lives around calculation, not sentiment. News screens muted along the wall display still images from the luncheon, Amara beside him. Hand in his. The headlines scroll beneath in silent repetition. Jeniho sits at the head of the table, no expression, no apology. Visibility was controlled. He says evenly, no one interrupts at first. "That is respect. Or caution." Then Senior Captain Han leans forward. Han has been with him 15 years. He does not fidget, he does not hesitate. "With respect," Han says calmly. "Controlled visibility is still visibility." The room shifts slightly. A few eyes drop, others sharpen. "Rivals are recalculating," Han continues. "Political contacts are distancing. We survived because we were disciplined." He glances toward the muted screen. "This looks emotional." The word hangs heavier than insult. Jeniho doesn't blink. "It was deliberate." Han nods once but doesn't yield. Deliberate affection is still leverage. Silence spreads wider now. Men who have seen wars understand what Han is really saying. Not that the wife is the problem, but that attachment invites precision strikes. "You're risking visibility for a woman." Han finishes. There it is. No one moves. The room waits for Jeniho's response. He could neutralize it with logic, with numbers, with strategic overlays. Instead, he does something unexpected. "She stood beside me," he says quietly. That isn't a rebuttal, it's personal. Han studies him carefully. "And now, every enemy knows she can influence you." Jeniho's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. "Influence isn't weakness." Han doesn't smile. "It becomes weakness when it overrides distance." The air thickens, no shouting, no raised voices, but the fracture is visible. Jeniho stands slowly. The movement alone silences the undercurrents. "You think I'm compromised," he says evenly. Han doesn't flinch. "I think you're exposed." There's a difference, but not enough. He walks around the table slowly. Not pacing, measured. Every step controlled. "Exposure isn't new," Jeniho says. "We operate in plain sight when necessary." He stops behind Han's chair. Han doesn't turn. That's loyalty. Or stubbornness. "But you chose to make her visible," Han continues quietly. "That was unnecessary." Jeniho steps back into view. "It was necessary. For the Empire." Han asks evenly. Or something else. There it is. The accusation isn't loud, but it's surgical. The room feels it. Jeniho could dismiss it. He doesn't. "For me," he says. The admission lands harder than any denial. A murmur shifts along the table, subtle, but present power becomes unstable when leaders admit preference. Han leans back slightly. "That is precisely the concern." Jeniho's gaze sharpens. You question my judgment. I question your risk tolerance. The honesty is almost admirable. I in another room in another year. This might have been debate today. It is fracture. Genaho walks back to the head of the table. He rests both palms lightly on the surface. You think she is the weakness, he says calmly. Han holds his gaze. I think enemies will decide she is. That's enough. The decision forms quickly, not emotional, not reactive, irreversible. You are relieved of operational authority effective immediately, Genaho says. The sentence is delivered without volume, without drama, but it detonates inside the room. Han doesn't move at first, then slowly he stands. You're making a mistake, he says quietly. Genaho doesn't respond. Security steps forward. Not aggressively, but visibly. Han looks around the table. Some eyes avoid him. Some calculate. This is public. Humiliation. Stripping a senior captain in front of peers fractures hierarchy. Han exhales once. For 15 years, he says evenly. I protected your perimeter. Genaho's expression doesn't soften. And now I protect mine. That ends it. Han removes his ring from the table and sets it down deliberately. He doesn't bow. He walks out. The door closes softly, but the impact echoes. The room recalculates immediately. Power has shifted. Not just from Han, but inside Genaho himself. He sits again. Authority reassignments will be distributed within the hour, he says calmly. No one objects, not allowed. But something unspoken lingers. Because Han was loyal. And loyalty just collided with emotion. When the meeting adjourns, encrypted. Messages move faster than before. Men who followed Han closely begin forming private conversations. Genaho stands alone for a moment after the room empties. The screens still loop her image beside him, hand steady, eyes forward. He made the choice deliberately. He does not regret it. But fractures rarely show their depth immediately. They widen in silence. He turns to leave the room. A notification flashes briefly on a secured device. Internal chatter flagged. Unusual routing patterns. He doesn't open it. Yet he doesn't need to, not yet. Because the real question isn't whether enemies saw weakness, it's which man in that room just decided she is. The power cuts at 2:17 p.m. No warning, no flicker. Just darkness. Her office falls silent mid-sentence. Architects freeze around half-built models. The emergency lights hesitate before igniting in dull red. Amara looks up from the blueprint in her hands. The city skyline beyond the glass windows blurs in the sudden shift. And then the window explodes. The sound isn't loud at first, it's sharp. Glass fractures inward in a violent spray. A single crack echoes across the room. She doesn't register the gunshot. Until Genaho is already moving. He doesn't shout, he doesn't hesitate. He crosses the space in 2 strides and pulls her down behind the heavy drafting table. The second shot hits concrete where she had been standing seconds earlier. Screams ripple through the office. Staff scatter. Security outside begins shouting into radios. Genaho shields her body with his own hand firm at the back of her neck, keeping her down. The third shot doesn't come. The silence after gunfire is worse than the noise. Security breaches the rooftop in under 60 seconds. A scuffle, a body forced down, sirens far below in the street. Genaho doesn't release her until he hears the coded phrase through his earpiece, target secured. He lifts his head slowly, his face unreadable. Amara looks up at him. Breath steady but eyes wide. Not broken, not hysterical, just aware. I'm fine, she says first. He nods once, that's all. She looks toward the shattered glass. That wasn't random. He doesn't answer, because they both know it wasn't. Security escorts them downstairs quietly, no flashing lights, no public panic. The building evacuation is controlled. But phones are already rising across the street. Someone captured the shattered window. Someone captured him covering her. The narrative spreads before the shooter speaks. In a secured basement 3 hours later the shooter kneels on concrete. Blood at his temple but alive. Genaho stands in front of him. Not raging, not pacing. Who ordered it? He asks calmly. The shooter hesitates, his lip trembles, not from loyalty, from fear. I need a name, Genaho repeats. The man swallows hard. Captain Han's second, he whispers. The room goes colder. Who? Min-jae. The name lands like a quiet explosion. Min-jae, young, ambitious, closely aligned with Han. He continues. He said she was destabilizing the structure. Said if she's removed quietly balance returns. Jenaho doesn't react outwardly. But something shifts permanently inside him. You were told to kill her? Yes. No hesitation in that answer. Jenaho nods once to the guards. The shooter is dragged away. No dramatic execution. Not yet. There is process, but the betrayal has already crossed a line. He calls an emergency council meeting that evening. No delay, no secrecy. All senior members present. The room is heavy, the air sharp with unspoken accusation. Min-jae stands among them, composed, for now. Jenaho enters last. No rush, no visible fury. He places a single bullet casing on the table. It rolls slightly before settling. This was recovered from my wife's office, he says evenly. No one speaks. He looks directly at Min-jae. You authorized it. It's not a question. Min-jae doesn't deny immediately. He calculates options. There are none. For structural integrity, he says calmly. Few men shift in their seats. The phrasing is strategic, not emotional. You believed removing her would restore discipline, Jenaho continues. Min-jae nods once. Personal attachments weaken empires. The audacity of the statement ripples through the room. Jenaho walks slowly toward him. And you believed I would accept correction through assassination. Min-jae doesn't answer. Security moves before he can reach for anything. Jenaho stops inches from him. You fired at my wife. The room stills permanently. That sentence seals fate. He doesn't debate. He doesn't deliberate. He draws his weapon calmly, not rushed, not shaking. Some men look away. They know what comes next. He fires once. The sound echoes inside the chamber. Min-jae collapses instantly. Silence follows. No shouting, no chaos. Just the permanent echo of consequence. Jenaho lowers the weapon slowly. Let this be clear, he says evenly. Internal correction does not include my family. No one challenges him. No one moves. But something invisible fractures. Trust spreads differently now. Fear replaces debate. The message is absolute. He chose her. And he killed one of his own in front of witnesses. The victory is decisive. But poisoned. After the room empties, murmurs travel in encrypted threads. Some fear loyalty has shifted from structure to sentiment. Others fear unpredictability. Jenaho stands alone again in the dim light. He knows what he did. He knows the cost. Execution enforces order, but it also exposes vulnerability. He protected her publicly. He eliminated dissent brutally. Now alignment is irreversible. He steps outside into the night air. The city hums unaware. Amara waits inside the car when he approaches. She looks at him carefully. She knows. He nods once. She doesn't ask for details. She understands enough. He gets in beside her. The door shuts softly. She reaches for his hand this time. Not trembling, not afraid. But aware that something fundamental shifted today. He executed. A captain for her. And the organization saw it. Power is maintained by fear. But sustained by trust. And tonight trust cracked. The question lingers heavier than the gunshot that started it all. Did he weaken his throne to save her? The retaliation doesn't arrive with gunshots. It arrives with paperwork. Audit notices. Tax reviews. Permits re-examined. Her firm receives 3 separate compliance inquiries within 48 hours. City inspectors appear unannounced. Clients suddenly request contract pauses. Pending review. Investors who once returned her calls within minutes now respond through assistance. Media headlines evolve from speculation to implication. Architect wife tied to ongoing syndicate tensions. Financial networks. Scrutinized, political donors withdraw support quietly. Not publicly. Just enough to create distance. She reads it all in silence. First she tries to treat it as coincidence. Timing clusters don't lie. She knows that. She built her career on pattern recognition. Jenaho watches from across the room as she scrolls through the latest cancellation notice, a long-standing museum contract postponed indefinitely. They said it's reputational alignment. She murmurs, not angry. Not crying. Just calculating her. Phone vibrates again. That a close friend from graduate school. Text short, we should talk later. The space between words heavier than explanation. BY afternoon 2 junior architects submit resignation letters. No confrontation, no accusations. Just fear disguised as career opportunity. She sets the phone down carefully. It's starting, she says. He doesn't deny it. He nods once. Yes. He had expected retaliation, but not the speed of its elegance. This isn't street violence, it's structural suffocation. This is cleaner than bullets, she says quietly. He studies her face. She isn't panicked. She's aware that her world is shrinking around her like tightening architecture. The next blow lands at dusk, a city council inquiry into zoning compliance at her newest project. Delays immediate. All payments frozen pending review. She exhales slowly. That's $3 million in suspended revenue. He steps closer. I can absorb that. She shakes her head gently. That's not the point. The point is authorship. The point is ownership. She built this firm before him, before marriage, before protection. Now it's being repurposed into leverage. Her name trending alongside investigative pieces about criminal enterprise connections. Not accusations. Just adjacency. Adjacency is enough. Clients fear adjacency more than guilt. He makes the decision before asking her. He calls Min-suk. Prepare the Midtown building. There's a pause on the other end. Permanent relocation? Yes. He ends the call. She looks up. What Midtown building? The one I own, he says calmly. You're moving my firm? Securing it. The distinction matters to him, not to her. She stands slowly. Without asking? The question is quiet. He doesn't flinch. Your leases are vulnerable. Your servers are exposed. The Midtown building is insulated. She nods once, but her eyes shift. Insulated by you. He doesn't deny it. Trucks arrive the next morning, logos removed discreetly, files transferred, security systems upgraded overnight. She walks through the new office space larger. More polished windows, tinted guards stationed outside the entrance, not hidden, not subtle. This is permanent, she says quietly. Until the pressure stabilizes. It won't, she replies. The guards outside don't look at her directly, but they are there. Always there. Her independence contracts invisibly, not through restriction, but through perimeter. She can't leave without an escort. She can't host clients without clearance. Even invitations now filtered through security review. She watches her assistant hesitate before scheduling meetings. They're scared, the assistant whispers. Of what? Of being watched. The building hums with quiet efficiency. But it isn't hers anymore. Not fully. Genaho stands in the doorway watching her absorb it. You're safer here, he says. She nods slightly. I know. But safety feels heavier than risk. She walks to the window. Looking down at the city she used to move through freely. Protection leaves fingerprints, she says softly. He hears the weight in it. Fingerprints mean traceability. Mean ownership. Mean his name etched into her professional life whether she consents or not. Her phone buzzes again. Another client suspending collaboration pending public clarity. She turns it face down this time. They're not attacking me, she says quietly. They're isolating me. He nods once. That's the strategy. Make proximity expensive. Make independence impractical. He approaches her slowly. You wanted us to stand beside each other. She turns to face him. I did. Her voice steady. But standing beside someone powerful still casts a shadow. He feels that more than he shows. He didn't cage her intentionally. But the perimeter exists now, security permanent. Guards visible. Building owned by him. Financial flows stabilized by his capital. She built something independent. Now it operates under his architecture. She walks past him toward the door. The guards straighten instinctively as she exits. That subtle reflex hurts more than hostility. She notices it too. Inside the car later she stares out the window. I asked you to stand beside me, she says quietly. Not to absorb my world. He doesn't answer immediately, because absorbing is what he does. He stabilizes, he consolidates, he protects, but protection consumes territory. He reaches for her hand, she lets him hold it, but her gaze stays on the passing skyline, not distant, not resentful, just thinking her firm is safe, her life secured, enemies recalibrating. But the cost is visible, contracts gone, friends retreating, guards outside doors. And her independence narrowing quietly beneath the word safety. The question lingers between them, unspoken but undeniable. Can love survive ownership? Months pass. The audit's slow. Political pressure recalibrates. Media finds a new scandal to consume. Her firm stabilizes inside the Midtown building. Contracts return gradually. Not the same clients, not the same freedom. But enough, the guards remain. Security permanent. Perimeter normalized. She moves through it now without flinching. That may be the part that unsettles him most. 4 a.m. he wakes again. The room is dark. The city distant beyond the glass. He turns slightly toward her. She's asleep. Breath. Steadied, no tremor, no whispered please, no tears on her cheek. The nightmares are gone. She sleeps peacefully. That should feel like victory. Doesn't. His eyes trace the outline of her face in the dim light. She chose to stay. She adapted. She learned the rhythm of protection. She learned where cameras are. She learned which elevators bypass public floors. She learned how to pause conversations when staff enter. She never complains. She never asks him to undo what he built around her. That silence weighs heavier than feared. He shifts slightly in the bed. The digital clock reads 4 a.m. again. Full circle. This time the whisper doesn't come from her. It comes from him. Please don't. It leaves his mouth before he fully registers it. She doesn't wake. He watches her carefully as if the world might answer through her stillness. He isn't asking her not to leave. She already proved she won't. He's asking something quieter. Please don't disappear inside this structure. Please don't shrink so well that I mistake it for peace. He sits up slowly, runs a hand through his hair. The empire is stable. Internal fractures sealed. External threats recalculated, council disciplined. But something else shifted. He remembers the first night she whispered. He responded with surveillance, with control, with perimeter. Now she sleeps calmly inside that perimeter. And he wonders what part of her adapted to survive it. He leaves the bedroom quietly, moves downstairs. The house is silent. Security monitors hum faintly in the adjacent room. He stands alone in the office where so many decisions were made. He opens a file not related to threats, not related to rivals. Corporate structure diagrams of his legitimate holdings, real estate, logistics, architecture development arms, legal hospitality chains, majority shares in holding companies. All routed through his name. Layered, shielded, untouchable. He studies the architecture of his own power. 4 years control meant concentration, no dilution, no external claim. Now he does something unprecedented. He calls Minsuk at 4:22 a.m. There is no irritation in Minsuk's voice. That's loyalty. Prepare a transfer, Genaho says calmly. Which asset? All legitimate majority holdings. There is a pause. To whom? To her. Silence stretches on the other end. Permanent filing, Genaho adds. Public record. Boss. Minsuk hesitates carefully. That restructures perception. I'm aware. It does more than perception. It shifts control. He ends the call and leans back in his chair. Shared power destabilizes predictable hierarchies. It confuses enemies. It unsettles counsel. It invites recalculation. He knows that. He also knows ownership without balance breeds resentment. He returns upstairs as dawn begins to stretch faint light across the skyline. She stirs slightly when he enters the bedroom but doesn't wake fully. He sits beside her for a moment. She opens her eyes slowly. You're up. Early, she murmurs. He nods once. Couldn't sleep. She studies his face with quiet perception. You look like you decided something. He almost smiles. She knows him too well. I did. She sits up slowly. What? He hands her a tablet quietly. The preliminary filing document already drafted. She reads in silence. Her breathing changes subtly. You're transferring control, she asks. He nods. Majority shares. Legal arms only. Her eyes move back to his. Why? He answers without performance. Because standing beside you means I don't absorb you. Silence returns, not fractured, heavier, but different. This isn't romantic, he adds quietly. I know, she says. She understands what this means. Structural vulnerability, strategic exposure. She looks at him steadily. You're risking perception. Shared power is less predictable, he replies. Unpredictable empires are harder to attack. She studies him carefully. She feared becoming controlled. He feared losing control. Now he has done something more dangerous than either. He has redistributed it. Public filing will finalize by noon. News will circulate. Council will react. Some will interpret it as weakness. Others as evolution. Enemies will hesitate before striking a structure they don't fully understand. She places the tablet down slowly. You don't have to prove anything, she says softly. I'm not proving, he replies. I'm adjusting. The word lands right. She lies back down slowly, but this time when she closes her eyes he remains sitting beside her. The first light of morning fills the room gradually. He watches her breathe, steadied, undisturbed, no whispers. The clock reads 4 a.m. fading into dawn. Silence returned, heavier than before. She feared becoming controlled. He feared losing control. Now the world belongs to both of them, and in his world, shared power is the most dangerous gamble of all.